Welcome to the Evangelist. I'm in the midst of addressing a basic structure, a philosophical structure in terms of responding to people when they object about a presentation of the Christian faith and resist a presentation of the gospel, and how it is that we might address that issue. In the acrostic sleep, I've spoken of scripture, and now I want to speak in terms of the L of logical fallacy. Now, in this case, people who flat out deny the reality of heaven or hell or God or angels or the authority of the New Testament or even the historicity of the biblical account, when there's a flat denial, when they say there is no hell, there is no heaven, there is no God, this requires a little bit more finesse, and I recommend this in terms of the use of a couple of illustrations to illustrate the idea of logical fallacy. When someone says there is no God, what they're using is a universal negative, meaning in all of the universe, there is no place where God exists. There is no God. And to make a statement like that, to use a universal negative, is very difficult to prove. In fact, the idea can be illustrated, for example, in this one. Someone might say, there are no diamonds in Australia. They're free to make a statement like that. But to prove that there are no diamonds, one would need to go into every diamond shop or every jeweler or every gem dealer. They would need to cover every square meter of land. They would have to dig up the whole of the country, and they would, I suppose it is possible to prove that there are no diamonds in Australia. But this would be a very arduous task to prove a statement such as that. In the same way, it's very difficult to prove the statement, there is no God. The opposite to that is, well, we could say there is at least one diamond in Australia, and all you would have to do is just find one. And you've already disproved a universal negative. As it's much easier to prove there are diamonds than there are no diamonds in Australia. In a similar vein, I can mention this illustration. These are used by James Kennedy in Evangelism Explosion. He said that Yuri Gagarin, who was the first Russian cosmonaut who encircled the Earth in outer space, he came back to Earth and boasted, saying, there is no God. And from a atheistic, communist context, he was bold in his proclamation of this universal negative. I've been all around the earth, I've been above the clouds, and I can tell you there is no God. Well, perhaps God is hiding behind the planet Saturn. He hadn't gone that far. In fact, he hadn't even gone past the Milky Way, or even past our solar system. In fact, for him to make a universal negative statement like that, he would have to cover every patch of the known universe, which is growing larger and larger and larger as I speak. Very difficult to prove a universal negative. And it's a bit like me saying, I've grown up in Sydney, Australia. I've lived and I've travelled all around Australia, and I can tell you convincingly there is no such place as Kathmandu. They talk about Kathmandu, but I've never seen it. I've been everywhere, all across this vast continent, and there is no such place as Kathmandu. Well, if I hadn't travelled across the Indian Ocean, there was very little chance I would see Kathmandu. So in this context, you see, a logical fallacy, when someone says there is no God or there is no heaven, The onus is upon them to try and prove a universal negative, and this is very, very difficult indeed. It's much easier to prove that there is a place called Kathmandu, or that there is God, or that there are diamonds in Australia. So I commend those illustrations to you and encourage you to use them in your witness when necessary.